welcome everyone to GC Live Fowl Balls. As always, I'm Intern Joe. Joined with me is my co-host Jack Veltri, and the Colossus of Clout, Collyn Taylor, is back with us here today. Preview this regional upcoming for South Carolina baseball at Founders Park this weekend. Guys, how are we doing?
Joe, I think you're muted, buddy. Based on what I'm seeing, there you go. It automatically muted all of us, I think, for a second. So we were off to a hot start. I think we're good now.
All right. But yeah.
Welcome in, everybody.
Welcome back, Collyn.
Yeah.
Yes.
The elephant in the room.
No, I do the veteran move of let the either current or former students handle the other stuff, and then when it's postseason time, I'm back.
We need to come back.
Yeah.
Love that. Jack, how we doing?
Man, I'm doing great. Today's just been an awesome day. But yeah, man. Okay, we're off to a great. All right. Let's start fresh. Today is great. Great day.
Man,
it's Wednesday. We're halfway through the week, and I'm ready for postseason baseball, man. This is what we play for. This is what we write for.
This is the treat. We work all season. We grind all season. And it's postseason baseball time.
We missed it last year, so
at Founders Park for the first time, 2021 kind of, because they were a 2-seed hosting a regional, but now we get it in a 1-seed for the first time since 2016. That was my junior year of college. You're talking about a very, very long time since that's happened, and it's going to be really interesting to see how South Carolina plays and if this week off helps them out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, South Carolina hosting is a big deal. 26-7 at home to get some home cooking finally for South Carolina baseball. As you can hear, my dog loves the fact that they're at home. It's everything you could ask for and more. I mean, especially for a struggling team like South Carolina. I'm sure, obviously, the reception at the presser, Collyn, you were there. Spirits were a little bit higher than they have been in the last couple of weeks for South Carolina baseball, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, 100%. And it's one of those things where you spend so much time focusing on it, so much time. Will they host? Will they not host? Are they going to – whatever that looks like, and they find out Sunday night, they host, and it just kind of felt like a weight had been lifted off their shoulders, that they feel better, that they feel confident that, like, okay, we earned this. Now it's time to go show why. And I think that that's huge for the confidence of this team. I'm really interested to see how they play at home, what the offense looks like first and foremost, and how things kind of operate for South Carolina, confidence and mojo-wise, because that's one of the biggest reasons why they had so much success early on in the year.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Collyn. I just think right now, despite all the struggles they've had this past month, I mean, they've kept it pretty loose throughout. I mean, when you say it's just they're playing with confidence, playing with swagger, and then even though they're losing a few games here and there, it's they're still having fun while doing it. And it seemed that way at the presser and all that, and at the party and all that. So, yeah, I'm wondering to see how they kind of go into this. I think, Mark Kingston obviously said it's going to be like opening day for them again. So maybe they'll treat it as such and, just play loose and have fun and not worry about it too much. Obviously, it's the postseason, so I think the feeling inside is going to be a little bit different just because it is this is what you play for at the end of the day. You're trying to get to Omaha again, and obviously that's got to kind of be going through their minds as to, it's a little bit more pressurized than an opening day or even just a regular season game. But I think they're up to the challenge. Having it at home, I think, makes all the difference in the world, because if you're on the road, I feel like you're probably a little bit more tense and you don't want to make mistakes. So I think being at home is definitely going to be the energy boost that this team needs moving forward.
Yeah, and Joe, would you like to do the honors for our lovely title sponsor, Clint Hammond?
Yes, absolutely. Before we got into the injury report, the starting rotation, and our predictions for who will be in the starting rotation, let me talk to you guys about Clint Hammond real quick. Clint Hammond is our title presenting sponsor. All of his info is above us. You can reach him at 803-771-6933. You need help with your mortgage, call our good friend Clint Hammond at the Movement Mortgage Network. Since 2003, which allows me to help everyone from the first-time home buyer to the complicated and complex jumbo buyer. Whether you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance, nothing is more important than a well-thought-out financial strategy that comes with 5-star service. He's even helped their very own Wes Mitchell and Gamecock quarterback and my post-game co-host Perry Orth with their mortgages. So give our guy Clint a call. Once again, his number is 803-771-6933. Give him a call for all of your mortgage needs. As we keep on rolling, the injury report. Collyn, what are you seeing from that? Who's going to be active? Who's not?
All right. So there's a lot going into this injury report. We'll get a firmer update on Will McGillis, probably Chris Veach, although I think he's going to be ready to go tomorrow during the press conference. So we can go through the schedule of that at the end. Cole Messina's on track to play. Braylon Wimmer is on track to play at short, which is huge news for South Carolina. So you're getting two of those guys back in their natural positions where they need to be. And for South Carolina, Will Sanders should be available to pitch, largely out of the bullpen, been dealing with a lower body injury. So you're talking about three guys that South Carolina, if they're going to reach their apex of what this team can be, then you're talking about those three guys being healthy and available and whatnot. So if you're South Carolina, that's good news. And now it's just about there are no more excuses. You're healthy. Now go out there and try to win the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Jack, you got anything? Who out of, I guess, the guys that are coming back, are you kind of looking forward to seeing once again?
Yeah, Collyn was touching on it. I think Braylon Wimmer is you've really been missing him at shortstop. Not to say that they haven't done a bad job filling guys in and whatnot, especially Michael Braswell. He deserves all the flowers in the world for his performance at second, short, and third during this whole injury stretch. But I think it's very important to get him back and have him as the captain of the infield, especially at short. And he's been playing really good defense when he's there. And then, obviously, if you get Will McGillis back, I think the ideal situation would be to have him at second this weekend, starting there, or even at DH too. And then you have Wimmer on the other side at short. So I just think when you get those guys back at full strength, there's no excuses like Collyn said, but I just think this lineup is so much more dangerous with those guys. And then obviously you get Will Sanders back. I think in any capacity, getting him back is very important, but I think this is his real time to show everyone that, this whole season has kind of been a crap show, honestly. But if you can turn it around starting on Friday and going through the weekend, then I think you have everyone reeled back in confidence-wise. So, yeah, it's going to be a very fun weekend, and it's really good that South Carolina's got everyone back, whereas the last month it's been just whoever can play, come on in.
Clinging to, Mark Kingston even joked that in his press conference after getting announced, he was like, you're talking about having guys, you're just trying to field a team to practice and play a game, so you really can't get after it the way we needed to in practice at times. And it's hard, really, too, kind of in football and basketball. Guys it's hard to get better during a season. You can adjust and tweak things, but in reality, for South Carolina, you're off on Monday, you play Tuesday, then you practice Wednesday, Thursday, and it's all scouting report and getting ready to go for a game, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then you're off Monday, play Tuesday. It's very cyclical. So having 8 days to really kind of decompress, take a moment and say, okay, this is what we're doing wrong. These are the things we need to get back to. These are the things we can really tweak and work on. That's huge for South Carolina. And that's something that if you're this offense, you take a lot of onus in and saying, okay, we got 8 days to really tweak our offense, get things really back to where they deserve to be, need to be. And we take that into what is a very important regional for this team and a very winnable regional. But it won't be if the offense can't really get going like it had been through the first 40 games of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we talk about Wimmer being back. Collyn and Jack, we talked about it all season long on the show, how kind of sleepy important his bat is to the lineup. It's really, really important. It doesn't get talked about enough. I think it's postseason, it's put up or shut up time, and you're gonna need Raylan Wimmer, a guy who's kind of your defunct captain, if you will, in the infield.
Yeah.
You're gonna need his bat, you're gonna need his leadership. So good to get him back for game one. Starting rotation has not been announced yet. Who do you guys have in mind for your starting rotation?
I will say I do think they're going to hold Mahoney. I think they're going to hold Mahoney for Saturday, whoever that is, NC State, whether that's a winner's bracket. I mean, obviously, chalk, you expect South Carolina to win that Friday game. So you're hopefully playing in a winner's bracket with Jack Mahoney going up against NC State or Campbell Saturday night, Founders Park, under the lights with that crowd. That would be my guess for game two. I'm really interested to hear, who do y'all think, because you can make the argument for a couple guys, who starts Friday night, 7 p.m. against Central Connecticut State?
Yeah, I hate the idea of playing it safe, I guess, because you want to, preserve guys. You're playing for the next game, essentially, with Mahoney starting Saturday then. I kind of don't like that mentality, especially with the run they've been on lately or sputtering out lately, just losing games and stuff, because I think you really do want to throw your best. Now, in an ideal world, if you had Noah Hall and Will Sanders in the rotation, I think you treat it just as such, like a weekend rotation. But in this case, it's kind of play by matchups and all that stuff. And I think if I had to pick someone to start Friday right now, I'd probably go James Hicks or Eli Jones. But if I'm picking one guy, I'd probably go James Hicks just because of the tone that he can kind of go ahead and set. He's a guy that can get ground balls against, power heavy teams, which is obviously what you kind of want in that situation. And he can give you length. He can go short. I mean, he can really do whatever you need to do in that first game. And I want a tone setter, and I think that's him. A couple of weeks ago, maybe I would have said Eli Jones, and he's been pitching really well this year. But just lately, I think you want to ride the hot hand, and pitching will, win you championships. So start it off with a guy that can get you through at least 5 or 6 innings.
Yeah, I like that pick, Jack. And just to be different, I am going to go with Eli Jones. James Hicks was my first pick, obviously, because
James Hicks is my pick too. Hicks.
He's been that dude for a little bit, and so obviously, I think for me, he's the guy just because of all the swagger coming into it, and the two could be possibly two-headed punch of, a James Hicks and Jack Mahoney. That's a lot of energy right there in the first 2 games. So I think Hicks is the default pick, but going in a different direction, I think Eli Jones is my sleeper pick, because a guy that, again, like we said, was on a hot streak there for a little bit, pitching well, and being able to put guys out a lot. And so I think in terms of the season, you want a guy that's you need a spark from leading into a Jack Mahoney. You need the whole team to get a spark out of somewhere, find it from somewhere, and Eli Jones could be that guy. And plus James Hicks, you save him possibly, and then I think it's a good dilemma to have when you have a James Hicks and a Matthew Becker, which one is going to go win you the regional if everything plays out the way you want it. So obviously James Hicks is my pick for Friday, but I think Eli Jones is a sleeper there. If you did want to take the conservative route and save, I mean, you're heavy hitters for later in the weekend.
Yeah, I'm going Hicks. I think if you're South Carolina, you're projecting this thing out to where you might have to play NC State either Sunday, if all things break, because Mahoney will start game 2, I'm fairly sure. Weirder things have happened, but let's play it out. You might have to play NC State or potentially on a Sunday in an elimination game or a chance to win a regional. And they're really left-handed dominant. And if you're South Carolina, James Hicks has been a lot better against right-handed hitters than he is against lefties. So you think, okay, there's a few lefties on the Central Connecticut State lineup, but they're mostly right-handed. Let's put a guy out there that's just going to sinker ball them to death and let them drive it into the ground like Georgia did and really make them earn it. and Georgia didn't. And if you're James Hicks, you feel pretty confident going in there just to sinker ball them to death. And then Eli Jones, who's been better against lefties than James Hicks has, he's out there in the ether, ready to go. Matthew Becker's out there in the ether, ready to go. And here's another thing, too. If James Hicks pitches on Friday and you really, 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 really need him on a Monday in an elimination game, there's a potential he could come back in a very short spurt and give you an inning or two. So I think that there's that other piece to it as well, that you've seen that happen before where guys start on a Friday and then pitch again later in the weekend. It's not conventional, but if you're South Carolina, you're thinking, well, maybe like a Hicks, if he can really bounce back, he takes care of his arm well, he gives us 20 more pitches on a Monday in an elimination game, you feel really good about that. So I would go Hicks and then save Jones and or Becker for that Sunday game, whatever that looks like, if you get to Sunday, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Getting into, you guys want to talk about, I guess, the rest of the teams in this regional.
Yes. And I would like to say, too, how we're going to do it. We've divided. There are 3 other teams in a regional, and if you can count, there's 3 people on the screen. Each of us was assigned a team to evaluate and dissect, and I got Campbell. Joe, who had already started on Central Connecticut State, got Central Connecticut State, and Mr. Jack Veltri got the NC State Wolfpack. So we're going to go do it that way. So we will start with the number 4 overall seed in this regional. Joe, take it away on the Central Connecticut State Blue Devil.
Yeah, Central Connecticut State, there's a lot there to kind of unpack. I mean, 36-12, 25-5 in the Northeast Conference. They're 111 in the RPI, 0-4 versus the RPI top 100. They've only played one ranked team this year. They played them twice. It's LSU, and they got blown out in both of those games. This team is coming into this game really, really, really freaking hot. They lost back-to-back games in late April, and then they went on to win 19 of their next 24. It's pretty darn good. Their offense is solid. I mean, they're hitting over 300, 302. They're slashing 302, 395, and 472 slugging with 54 home runs. There's one player on that offense with double-digit home runs. And getting into my hitters to watch, that hitter is Ramon Jimenez, who is out due to a previous suspension, so he will not play against South Carolina on Friday night. He was slashing 347, 417, and 617. I mean, he's their best hitter on the team. It sucks missing this guy out of the lineup if you're Central Connecticut State. Another guy to watch is Elliott Good, 310, 384, 408 slugging with 38 RBIs and 2 home runs. And then they have 2 really, really good outfielders. And then the last guy can play a little bit of infield too. But Michael Tornierno, I believe is how you say it. He's hitting 336 with a 392 on base percentage, and he's slugging 431 with 25 RBIs and a homer. Watch out for this kid. He's one of the best. He's got one of the best slugging percentages on the team. The kid can rig. It was very, very clutch for them in the conference tournament. And then Hunter Pascalini, infielder, outfielder, kind of really does it all for Central Connecticut State. He's hitting 306 with a 443 on base percentage and a 425 slugging with 21 RBIs, 4 home runs, and 19 stolen bases with a concussed Cole Messina. If you expect him to be behind the dish, watch out for that kid when he's on base. He will be trying to take every single bag he will get a chance to take. Pitchers to watch, they're going to start a guy named Jake Newman. He's 6-2 in 13 games started. He's a junior. He's thrown 71 and 2/3 innings with a 4.65 ERA, allowed 3 home runs with 56 Ks. The head coach for Central Connecticut State elected not to go with the Northeast Conference Player of the Year, Dominic Niman. I can't say that, but that kid has a 2.76 ERA with 90 Ks. He's 12-2 in 14 starts. Obviously, you would expect to see their ace out to start for Central Connecticut State, but they're apparently saving him. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with that decision, but Newman will be the guy. Not bad, but also not your ace.
He's not the ace.
Yeah.
And I think I saw a tweet from Jamie Bradford, who is local podcast / radio host. He does a lot and knows a lot about baseball. He said, I think Neiman, their ace, their conference pitcher of the year, threw like 200 and something pitches in the conference tournament. So it's one of those things where do you let him a week later go out there and try to throw 100 pitches against South Carolina, or do you save him maybe for an elimination game, give him another day's of rest, or a winner's bracket game? Do you save him for Saturday just from a pitch count perspective?
Yeah. 9 innings for a college guy is quite a lot. So you will be seeing Newman. I think Newman's also – he's a good option. Obviously not your ace, like we said, but I think South Carolina, obviously you should beat a team like this, especially if you're starting a James Hicks. This team doesn't hit a lot of home runs, so you're not going to have the potential for as many, fly balls and as many big plays. So you really have to go in there and set the energy pitching-wise and defense-wise, and the bats will eventually get going. And their bullpen isn't great. It's been kind of mediocre, middle of the pack. I could not really find anybody worth mentioning out of the pen that was super stellar.
They have a closer, if I'm not mistaken, that's really good.
Yeah, that's true. I'd have to go back and find him.
I'm going to look him up as we talk.
Yeah. But, I mean.
So he has like 11 saves or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
Who's really, really, really good. As I type. But continue talking and I will.
Yeah, I mean, the offense, kind of getting back into the offense, they have a plus or a minus 36 advantage in strikeouts. So they've struck out 36 times less than their opponents. I think that's something to watch in terms of South Carolina's pitching. You got to get the strikeouts. This team doesn't like to do it. And so I think it's something you really have to do to win this game. Like I said, they're not hitting a whole lot of home runs, so you're going to see a lot of putouts. But you got to strike guys out if you want to win this game. If you want to put them away early too, I think that's how you do it. And again, we talked about the starting pitching. I'm trying to make sure I covered just about everything. Yeah, the 2 losses to LSU were obviously pretty big. They lost by like a combined score of 30. Like they lost by a combined score of 31 to LSU. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I got for Central Connecticut State. Collyn?
Yeah, they got run ruled by LSU twice. Their other 2 quad 1 games were a 5-2 loss to Northeastern and then a 10-4 loss to Connecticut. Were the 2 other ones. If you're looking for another pitcher to pay attention to, it is Luke Garofalo, I believe is how you say his last name. 43 innings pitched, 11 saves, 1 complete game, oddly enough, in the only game he started. He's allowed 27 hits total, 10 earned runs, walked 10, struck out 45 with a 2.09 ERA. So that is their closer. If you're South Carolina, you hope to not see him in the 8th or 9th inning. But I think that if Central Connecticut State has a lead, I don't think they're going to be afraid to turn to him at some point and see about getting as many outs as they possibly can from him over the course of the game. But RPI number 111, and South Carolina's only lost once to a team outside of the top 100 in the RPI all season. Oddly enough, I believe that was North Florida, who they just picked up a transfer from today, which we'll get to probably at the end of the show. But yeah, really good pickup. Really, really good pickup, Taltese. But it's a team that you can't take lightly, but if you can get it, like if they're starting a James Hicks, it's a team that doesn't hit for a ton of power. They don't strike out a ton. They try to hit for average and string things together, steal bases, manufacture. So that's kind of the team you're getting, a very Northeast team. So that's what they are. They're tough, and if you take them lightly, they have a chance to beat you. So,
yeah.
Do we now want to get to our interview?
Yeah, absolutely. Collyn, you want to introduce our guest as we recorded?
Absolutely. So not a lot of people know about the teams coming into this regional. So we reached out to Lee Long, an agent with the Ballingy Group, who has spent a ton of time watching South Carolina. He's based in the Midlands, but he's watched a ton of South Carolina, a ton of Campbell, a ton of NC State, is familiar with the Central Connecticut State program. So we spent about 15 minutes with him talking ball. So without further ado, our interview with Lee Long. Well, first of all, this is Gamecock Central Live. We appreciate Lee Long of the Ballingy agency coming on, an agent that works there. And he's going to come on and kind of talk a little bit about South Carolina, the Columbia Regional. He's based in the Midlands, so he understands South Carolina, Campbell, and all these guys really, really well. First and foremost, Lee, appreciate you joining us, and thank you so much for – I know this is a busy time of year, but we appreciate you hopping on and talking a little ball with us.
Yeah, happy to do it, and thanks for having me. Listen, I'm not the most technologically savvy, so if the camera turns off or something, make sure you tell me and stop me if I get to talking.
Yeah, that works. Trust me, I'm the same way, so we're fine. You obviously know the Southeast really well, the Carolinas really well. 3 teams from the Carolinas coming to Founders Park this weekend. What are your initial, when you saw the Columbia Regional pop up, what were your initial reactions seeing South Carolina first and foremost hosting, but also getting Campbell and NC State in the mix as well?
Well, I mean, first of all, I feel like the general public may not be quite as familiar with Campbell.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, yes, I had they had 2 first-round draft picks last year. I was fortunate enough to be the advisor and now the agent for one of those. So I'm very familiar with that program and the job that Justin Hare, their head coach, and Tyler Robinson, their pitching coach, have done there. They really just a tremendous job. That community really supports that program. And so while I knew the general public may not be as familiar with the program, they have been knocking on the door for several years. Their RPI, I believe, was the highest RPI that didn't get a host site. And so they're a very talented team. And my initial reaction was they've got a really, really high, very good potential first round front end starter named Cade Kuehler, who, reportedly has been up to 100 miles an hour. I've seen him up to 97. And then they have some pieces around it. They hit. They've got, I think they've hit it probably well over 100 home runs. Their lineup has some length to it. They play aggressive. If you remember watching Kentucky this year, it's they apply pressure on the other team. Some things are unorthodox and are a little unconventional, but it's been very successful for Coach Hare and what he's done in his career. So you can expect it's an exciting brand, and they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. They're an older group, so I don't think they're going to be intimidated. I think they'll come in ready to play. With that said, it's not their fault, but they play in a conference that, if you look at the RPI, the conference, they built a lot of their home run numbers and things against maybe some teams that are, in quad 4 of the RPI. And so it'll be interesting to see how it stacks up against, NC State in that opening game, which, I think NC State, was a bubble team. But there's some bubble teams that are very talented, and they are talented. Matt Willitson, who one of their main starters, he was a draftable guy, in my opinion, out of high school as a shortstop. Very good athlete. I'm not surprised that he's emerged as a leading arm. Gino Groover, I think it says Lou James Groover, but Gino Groover is a transfer from Charlotte, originally from the Atlanta area. Just a very talented hitter, kind of plays all over the infield. Who kind of, I would say anchors that lineup. So look, at this time of year, most of these teams you play, if they're coming out of a Power 5 conference, or if they dominated their conference the way with an RPI like Campbell has, it's a solid region. It's a regional. I would say I think there are some that are a little tougher. And so I think South Carolina has a path that I could see them, making their way to either hosting a super or heading down to Gainesville if Florida wins that super. So, I'm excited for the Midlands. I'm excited for, while our agency is based in Dallas, I live in Lexington. So it's fun to see the state of South Carolina hosting 3 regionals and seeing the Gamecocks hosting one here in my backyard.
Yeah, absolutely. And this Carolina team that, you can debate, should they have hosted, should they have not have hosted, but if they can't kind of figure the offense out in this regional, it's not going to matter because Campbell's a really talented pitching staff. You mentioned NC State having pieces. Central Connecticut's got the pitcher of the year in that conference coming in. You obviously watch a ton of baseball, a ton of South Carolina baseball. What did you see as the main issue offensively for South Carolina? And I know injuries played a part in it, but the injuries mixed with guys maybe going into some slumps at the wrong time.
Yeah, so, look, they have talented players. And I think we all would agree that the start they had was spectacular. And it's really hard to maintain that pace. I think back to the team that was finished 56-10 in 2000. I mean, those kind of seasons are rare. And there was likely going to be a regression. I don't think they were maybe as, talented as how they were performing then, but they were playing really well. And I don't think they're, I think they're somewhere between where they've played, more recently. And so, unfortunately, that contagious piece can go kind of both ways. And guys start to press and guys start to apply pressure to themselves and feel like, well, if the guys around me aren't doing it as much, I've got to do more. And I've got to hit a 5-run homer. And so what ends up happening is it creates a situation where, where that pressure, I don't want to call it pressure, but where they press and try to do more than they should. But I will say this, they've had some guys hold on to their approaches. Look, Monty Lee's one of the better hitting guys, or one of the best, in my opinion, hitting guys around, also leader. So as far as the offensive side between him and Coach Kingston, I feel like they'll have the team ready kind of for a new season, wipe the slate clean. You saw little glimpses of things in Hoover where balls were driven to the outfield that, at Founders, those things would be in the bullpen. And at Hoover, they were caught on the track. And then Ethan Petrie, coming, sort of showing some signs of what he was. Even, I look at guys' takes, how they take pitches, and are they comfortable? Are they on the ball? Are they identifying the pitch early? And from that, you begin to see, how comfortable they are at the plate. And, Petrie's takes were very good in the SEC, in my opinion. So it wouldn't surprise me to see, a sort of a back to the future where we'll see this team kind of start to regress back to what we saw at the beginning of the season. And again, you mentioned it, you got the health, right? I mean, Braylon Wimmer, I don't know why it is, and it's not uncommon, but when you look at his numbers, when he plays the field, he has hit way better offensively. Our pitching ERA, our catcher's ERA from Cole Messina is much better than the rest of the catching staff. So I anticipate if he's back from the concussion protocol, that's going to be very helpful to the defense. And then, look, Gavin Casas is one good swing away from being a real problem for teams again. And he was just missed a couple of balls in Hoover. So I think they're in a good spot to, have a great chance to win this regional at home.
Yeah, it's one of those where I think Ethan Petrie's OPS is close to 900 over the last 3 weeks. He's really getting back to what he was. And for South Carolina, what did they have to do top to bottom? You mentioned how talented this Campbell team is, how talented this NC State team is specifically. What does South Carolina have to do on both sides of things, or all three, pitching, defense, and all at the plate, to feel good about coming out of this regional with 3 wins and going on to play the winner of that Gainesville regional?
Well, these regionals are, anytime you get on the losers bracket, it becomes a very big challenge. And with the injuries they've suffered, on the mound, and they're significant, they're not small.
Right.
And losing a Noah Hall, who was, first 7 weeks is arguably their best pitcher, or at least their most effective pitcher. And, losing Eli Jerzenbeck, who could give them, kind of a different dynamic with some elite stuff out, and some length. Not knowing, what they'll get out of Will Sanders and his health, and hopefully he is what he's capable of being, because when he's at his top, he's one of the best in college baseball.
Yeah.
I think if they stay in the winners bracket, I just think that they play good defense, competitive at bats like they were having early in the year, really battling pitchers, running their counts up. If you get to a Central Connecticut pin, you're going to start to really see an opportunity to make a difference. And honestly, Campbell has a really big time front end arm and cooler that I'm certain will probably throw against NC State in game 1.
Yeah.
And behind that, it's a group of guys. They're talented and they're solid pitchers, but they haven't proven to be shutdown guys this year. Now, Ty Cummings is a very effective reliever. They kind of Swiss Army knife him a little bit like a James Hicks, and he actually throws a little like James Hicks. It's a sinker. It runs down and in, and I could see him multiple times. But I think South Carolina, I don't think they have to do anything spectacular. If they can stay in the winners bracket on game 1 and then get a really solid performance, my understanding is that they're going to probably go with Mahoney in the second game.
Right.
If they can get him, and they need their starters to get into the game. They can't. You can't afford a starter to get knocked out in the second inning. It becomes very, very difficult. So I think if they can get some length out of their starters, play good defense, they don't have to hit a ton to win this regional, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we let you go, how much do you know about Central Connecticut State? Not a lot of people in the Midlands. I know Coach Kingston was talking about going and
It froze up on me. I don't know if you can hear me. I cannot hear you. If you're able to text me, I'll be happy to continue. I do have some information on Central Connecticut State. And then the pitcher of the year, Dominic Niemann, he's gonna sink it. He's gonna be a guy that probably not gonna, he's not gonna strike out a ton of guys, but he's going to be gonna make them hit the ball, put it in play, and you're gonna have to be patient. He hasn't, he's walked like 24 and a little under 100 innings, so probably not gonna, he's gonna be around the zone. I think they're going to have to be aggressive on balls in the zone and find opportunities to sort of take advantage, because once you get past him and get into the pen, they do have a closer. Luke Garofalo has saved 11 games for him.
Yeah, 11 games. Really talented.
Yep. And he does have some strikeout stuff. And so if you can knock out Neiman early, you open your door to do some damage, it looks like, against some of the other guys. And then as far as hitters, they're not a real power driven team. They do have, one graduate guy, Jimenez, who's got some juice. But beyond that, it's more of a gap to gap type team. They do hit over 300 as a team, but again, looking at their schedule, looking at who they've played when they have played the teams of the caliber of South Carolina, those teams have had success against them. And so I certainly understand why South Carolina would try and maybe go with Mahoney on game 2 and see if they can perform. They're trying to win the regional and not just one game, and I understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Lee, is there anything else you'd like to add before we let you run?
No, just super excited for the state. I don't know if you saw, Coach Gilmore at Coastal Carolina mentioned that next year will be his last year. He's just done so much for this state, and not to mention that program. And so just we're very blessed in this state to have such great baseball players and such great talent, and then great coaches. And the high school coaches in the Midlanders and around the state are as good as any in the country. I'd put them up against anybody when I travel. So super, super excited about, baseball kind of putting their stamp back on the national landscape here in South Carolina. And heck, if Clemson wins a regional and Florida was to lose there and South Carolina wins, and if Coastal's matchup was to lose theirs, you could have 3 supers in the state, which would be really cool. So I'd be okay with that. So anyway, I appreciate you having me on, Collyn.
Yeah, appreciate it as always, Lee. And if there's anything you want to add or do that, we'll be glad to have you on again. Maybe when there's 3 supers coming in next weekend. How about that?
I'd love that. And certainly as we get closer to the draft, I'd be happy to talk some draft talk with you too.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Lee, and we'll see you down the road.
Yeah. So that was our interview. Collyn, wonderful. Hello.
Yeah, really, really good interview, Collyn.
No, I was going to say, yeah.
Phenomenal work as always.
Absolutely. So, Jack.
My Wi-Fi is just killing it.
Yeah.
Just killing it.
I was wondering, Collyn has a little bit of lag, but it's all good. Jack, you want to talk about our other presenting sponsor?
Yeah, absolutely. So our other presenting sponsor is Liberty Tax. Taxity is that uncertain feeling you get right before doing taxes, but you don't have to go through it alone. The tax team at Liberty Tax in Irmo, Lexington, and Columbia will walk you through the process, clear up any confusion, and guarantee you'll get the biggest possible refund or your money back. It's tax time. If you're in a hurry for your refund, call on the tax team at Liberty Tax. Fast, accurate, and guaranteed. But on the other hand, if you think you might be owing Uncle Sam, talk to the Liberty Tax team to make sure you're not paying more than you should owe. They'll find every possible deduction for you. They're locally owned and operated, staffed by tax professionals from your neighborhood. They're open 9 to 9 weekdays and 9 to 5 Saturdays. There are also multiple service options. Start through Liberty Tax mobile app or through the desktop portal. You can make an appointment or just walk in, and you can give a call to upload your tax documents. And when you come in, your return will be ready to review and sign. So that number on the screen is 803-462-5576. Again, if you have any tax needs, you can give them a call at 803-462-5576. Those are our friends over at Liberty Tax.
Absolutely. All of our good friends over there at Liberty Tax. So getting back into it, Collyn, you want to run us through Campbell?
He's on mute.
You are muted, sir. It's been one of those days.
It's okay, guys.
It's one of
Trust
those
me.
days.
We've got a lot going on.
Still muted.
Oh,
Goodness.
Can we hear me now?
Yes.
There we go.
no, I was joking.
Campbell's really good. Campbell's a really, really good baseball team. 44-13. They are number 13 in the RPI. They are the highest ranked RPI team that did not host. The only team outside of the top 16 to not host an RPI. The only team outside of the RPI top 16 who did not host was Campbell. Auburn was the team outside of the RPI that did. Campbell has beaten East Carolina. They have beaten North Carolina. They are a very, very good baseball team. The good news and the benefit for South Carolina is that ace, Cade Kuehler, that you heard Lee talk about, more than likely going to have to start against North Carolina State, which is really, really good news for South Carolina. He's got a 2.82 ERA and a 1.06 WHIP. I'm looking at his stats: 87 strikeouts in 67 innings, 27 walks. Just a really good college baseball player, a high-level prospect as well. The other two guys that you're looking at as starters are Hunter Lloyd and Chance DeQuilla, I believe is how you say his last name. Two guys who are good. They haven't been eye-popping numbers-wise. Lloyd with a 4.61 ERA, D'Aquila with a 5.25. Lloyd 1.43 whip, D'Aquila 1.25. So 2 dudes who are good, but not Cade Kuehler. I mean, 2 guys who can make some hay, but just when you're talking about the ace of a staff, it's Kuehler, and the good news is South Carolina might not have to face him. Aaron Rund is their closer, really, 3.83 ERA. Ty Cummings, another guy who's going to have some pitchability out of the bullpen, 3.22 ERA, 1.03 whip. Those are kind of the names to know there. And then I'll take a really deep breath because there are a lot of hitters you probably need to know on this team. You're talking about Lawson Harrell with a 12.72 OPS. Really good. He's got 22 home runs, 68 RBI, a BABIP of 430. He's slugging 788 while also hitting 374. I mean, just a really good ball player. Jared Belbin, I believe is how you say it, lefty outfielder, hits from obviously the left side in nearly 300 plate appearances. He's slashing 325, 430, 658 with just a measly 19 home runs and 62 RBI. So this is a team that's really good. They strike out on about 19.4% of their plate appearances, walk on about 13.1. So this is a disciplined team. This is a team that if you take lightly, they can beat you. You can make the argument they should be hosting. Committee did not see it that way, but very dangerous team. And I mean, you're talking about, I think they have 9 hitters with at least 100 plate appearances, 9, and 8 slug at least 500. Or no, all 9 are slugging at least 500, and 8 have on-base percentages over at least to 400. So very disciplined, very long lineup. I mean, you're going to get production 1 through 9. A good mix of left, right, more righties than lefties. But the lefties they do have are impact lefties. So just a very, very good team that it's going to be tough to beat. If you get through Campbell, then you deserve to win the regional if you're South Carolina.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're stacked. Just coming into it really hot, really, like you said, Collyn, really, 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 really good college baseball team. Jack,
I believe you're muted. Are you muted?
NC State.
No, I don't think I have that. I don't think I have that near me. I turned mine off just before. But no, speaking of Campbell, yeah, you guys are definitely right. They arguably should have been a hosting seed, but they're not. And South Carolina is. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about the North Carolina State Wolfpack. So yeah, starting off, this is a team that, in a sense, you might argue they should have, might have not. Jeez, it's been a night. They probably should. There's a chance they shouldn't have been in. They're one of the last 4 teams to get into the postseason here. Coming in, I think it's 61st out of 64 teams. So they're right on that bubble of being out, and probably rightfully so. They're 35-19 this year. They're 13-16 against the ACC. Now they are in the RPI. They're ranked number 23. But the big thing that kind of stands out to me is that they're 10-17 against quad 1 opponents. Whereas South Carolina, on the other hand, they've been fairly good this year. So I feel like if they're matched up with them, it's a winnable game as compared to Campbell, which could be a lot tougher. Probably the toughest game in the regional if they do face off. But overall in the RPI top 100, they're 18-19. So a lot of those wins they're getting against the lower quality teams, they're stacking them up in that area. But this is a very streaky team. Like Lee was saying before, they started out 5-9 in league play. They lost 4 of their first 5 series this year. But they finished okay. Like I said, I mean, they win a series, then they lose a series, and then they get back on track. So it's like you just don't know what kind of team you're expecting. Now, if it is any, relief or anything, they did lose a series to North Carolina, and then they bounced back to end the regular season with a series win over Pitt, and then you get bounced in the second game of the ACC tournament. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of team shows up to play on Friday. I would expect North Carolina State to be ready to roll with on the mound. I would expect Logan Whitaker to be pitching for them. Despite having worse numbers than the next guy we'll talk about, he's kind of been their Thursday and Friday arm this year. So Whitaker is 5-3 this year with a 4.5 ERA. He's thrown 75 innings. Had 75 strikeouts to 15 walks, which is really good. So expect him to be a guy that is not going to give up a ton of free passes. But he has given up some homers this year, 7 homers, which honestly isn't too bad. So right now, I would expect him to probably pitch Friday against Campbell. And then Saturday, regardless of when or who North Carolina or NC State plays, I think you're expecting to see Matt Wilson. Sorry if I butchered that, on the mound for NC State. Just like Whitaker, he's 5-4, but his ERA is a point lower, so it's 3.5 compared to 4.5. He's thrown 76 innings. He's got 79 Ks to 26 walks, and he's given up 5 homers. So I think right now that's the guy that he can be really good for North Carolina State. So I think if you're South Carolina and you win and North Carolina and NC State wins as well, that's the guy you kind of want to prepare for. So definitely want to keep an eye on him. And then honestly, their bullpen doesn't really blow me away by any means. Sure, they have a few guys that we'll talk about that are towards the top end of, relievers that can be good, but they do have a lot of guys that just haven't been so good this year. So if I'm South Carolina and I face NC State in this regional, you definitely want to get through those starters quickly and then go ahead and face that bullpen, which I would take my chances with and roll the dice against. So first up, you got Justin Lawson, who has probably been the best reliever on this staff this season. He's got a 3.5 ERA, 63 Ks in 48.2 innings, and he's been really good. I mean, teams are hitting 286 against him, but again, he's only allowed 5 home runs, and he's only given up 19 runs all year and walked 16. So that is probably one of their most impactful relievers, along with Dom Fritton. Now, he's a southpaw. He's a freshman, and he's kind of taken on that almost like James Hicks, that do-it-all type of role where you have him either starting, relieving, or even closing out games in some situations. He is 3-4 with a 3.59 ERA. He's made 9 starts, appeared in 17 games, and thrown 62 innings. He's got 75 Ks to 24 walks, and he's got 3 saves this season. So those are the guys that I would be paying attention to if you're a South Carolina fan. But the rest of that pitching staff really doesn't concern me as much. Again, you got a lot of guys on that staff that have above 4 ERA, even higher in some cases. So I think if you can get, like I said, if you can get through those starters 2 times through the order maybe and just burn them out, I think you're in a really good position. And then the offense, I guess if you've been paying attention to NC State for like the last 2 years, you're probably thankful that Tommy White isn't on this team anymore. He was, if you don't know, he was a force to be reckoned with in the homer category last year for the Wolfpack, and now he's at LSU. But hitters to pay attention to, I would say it really starts with their 2-hole hitter, Lou James Grover, the third. He's playing third for them. He's hitting .332 with 11 homers, 48 ribbies, and only 24 strikeouts. He's a guy that I noticed just doesn't strike out a ton. He'll have maybe a strikeout here and there, but you really have to work hard to get him out, I would say. And he's got a .530 slugging and a .432 on base percentage. And then in the 3-hole, you've got Cannon Peebles. He is their DH primarily, and he is hitting a cool .346 with a .456 on base percentage and a .715 slugging. So he's got 12 homers, 48 RBIs as well. And the interesting thing about him is that, he had been a really good hitter all year, hitting about in the 320s, 310s most of the year. But then just the final 5 games of this season, he raised his batting average 25 points, which is crazy to really think about. So if he's getting hot, I think he's getting hot at the right time, to be honest. And if he continues to play like he did down the stretch and into the ACC tournament, I mean, that's going to be the hardest guy, honestly, on this team to get out. And then just cleaning up in the 4-hole, you got someone who's kind of similar to Cole Messina in a way. You got Jacob Cozart. That's the Wolfpack's catcher. He's batting .310 with a .399 on-base percentage and a .565 slugging. And he's got 10 homers, 41 RBIs, 57 hits this season, and 13 of them are doubles. So that's the heart of the order that I would really pay attention to here. Again, NC State's got a lot of good hitters, but this is the bunch that I would really want to focus on getting out. And if you do that, you're in a really good position. Again, like I said, you just want to work through this pitching staff, get to the guys that you're putting pressure on to not pitch well and all that, and then you're focusing on getting these 2 through 4 guys out. And I think if you're matched up with them, I think I like South Carolina's chances, even if you're not hitting as well as you would like, because I do think that pitching staff can definitely take care of this order.
All name team, by the way. All name team. Cannon Peoples, fantastic. Lou James Groover, the third, which means that there are 2 more Lou James Groovers out there. Now, I believe he goes by Gio, or Gino, I believe is how they call him Gino. But then you got an Eli Serrano, the third, a Trevor Candelaria, and then Dominic Pioli, a Michael Gupton, and then Dominic Fritton. I mean, we're talking about truly an all-name team here.
Elite.
All name team. So
should be fun to write about this weekend.
Yes.
Yeah. Hopefully no spelling errors in there.
Oh, trust me. There are going to be plenty of times where I'm having to look over at notes especially with Central Connecticut State, because you have a lot of those Northeastern names, the Pasquales, the all that. So that's where we're going to have to looking at media guides and game notes pretty frequently.
100%.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, getting to South Carolina and kind of, I guess, putting a bow on this thing. Simple question for you guys. What does South Carolina have to do to win this regional?
Just got to hit. Yeah, got to hit. I think you don't have to hit at a high clip. I mean, you don't have to go out there and hit 400 for the weekend, but you got to get good at bats. You got to get back to your identity, which is power, good at bats, getting on base, and really, really, really getting timely hitting with their splits. I'll look it up as you guys talk, but their splits when they win situationally and their splits when they lose situationally are incredibly drastic. So I'll look this up and you guys take a look and give yours, because they're insane how different they are.
I'll go first. I guess it's put up or shut up time for these bats. You got exactly what you wanted. You're hosting a regional. You're in front of home fans the entire weekend. You got exactly what you wanted. There are no more excuses of playing on the road. You're getting your hitters back. I mean, it's put up or shut up time for these bats. Are you one of the best offenses in the country, or are you not? And you have the ideal conditions for it, for a kickstart and a deep run. Your offense has shown it's good enough to make a deep run. Now it's time to show everyone. And again, like I said, you get the home cooking. It needs to click offensively. I think pitching and defense, they've shown, especially this bullpen and starting rotation, they've shown that they can pretty much, do whatever they want, in terms of adversity. When adversity comes their way, they find a way. So I think offensively, that's where this whole regional and this whole tournament for South Carolina is going to lie on. Does their offense show up? Do they want to hit? And then the long ball. You got to hit the long ball. I mean, I think it's a nice touch. I don't necessarily think it's a necessity, but I think it's part of your identity at this point in the year.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Joe. It definitely is, like you said, it's no excuses at this point. Win or go home. That's what you're playing for right now. Your season could end as soon as Saturday, if we're being realistic. I mean, shoot, lose 2 games, you're done. But my kind of thing to look at here is it's a lot more cliche, I guess, and that's okay, I guess, in this case. I kind of alluded to it earlier, but I think the biggest key for them is just to treat it like how you played at the beginning of the year. You're having fun, doing all the little things right, and not putting too much pressure on yourself to win these games. Obviously, we know what's at stake. South Carolina's got to win this regional to get to the Supers against potentially Florida, and then you got to go through them to get to Omaha. But at the same time, that's all great. That's great and all, but I think at the same time, you want to live in the moment and just do what you got to do. Have fun. Don't worry about what's coming up next. Play one game at a time, and just you got to really hit well. You got to pitch well, all that stuff. But at the same time, if you're playing tense and just not focused on what's at hand, you're going to make mistakes. And we've seen this team really play a lot of bad baseball the past month. And we've been waiting and waiting and waiting to see when they're going to come back to that team we saw that was 34-6 at one point. Now, we saw a glimpse of what they can do against Georgia in the opening game of the SEC tournament when they won 9-0. They did just about everything right. You got a good start. You got the timely hits that you've been looking for all year. And then in the next two games, you go right back to what you've been doing all of May and late April, is just not playing your brand of baseball. So, yeah, my key in short is just South Carolina's got to play to its identity, score early, get your outs out of the guys that you know can pitch down the stretch. I'd be looking at guys like Cade Austin and Chris Veach and even maybe Matthew Becker. I think Matthew Becker's probably a guy that will pitch in any spot, really. I don't really expect him to start unless South Carolina needs him to. And there's more guys. Nick Proctor, I expect him to pitch a lot better after getting shelled against Texas A&M in the SEC tournament. But, yeah, just have fun and take it one game at a time and enjoy playing in front of this home crowd. Give them something to cheer about.
Yeah. I looked up the numbers. In 39 – it's insane. In 39 wins this year, South Carolina is hitting 260 with two outs, 322 with runners on base, and 301 with runners in scoring position. In the 19 losses, they are hitting 191 with two outs, 209 with runners on base, and 193 with runners in scoring position. So, I mean, it goes without saying, yes, of course, when you lose games, you don't get clutch hits with runners on base, but they just got to find ways to get timely hitting. They got to find ways to put good at-bats together back, pass the baton, essentially. Set the stage for your Messinas, your Petries, your Gavin Cossases, your Braylon Wimmers to drive in those runs and do that. But if not, then and you just struggle with men on and men in scoring position, it's going to be hard to really do a whole bunch offensively. And when they do, they win. And when they don't, they don't. So clutch hitting has to be key this week. And then you got to get good bullpen pitching as well.
Yeah, you really do need to draw your walks. Just get back to taking good at-bats, like you said, Collyn. Just where has that kind of been the last few weeks? It's like every at-bat in the first 40 games of the season, you saw them taking good pitches, making guys work. I mean, this team was so good at getting walks, getting hit by pitches, just doing all the little things and executing and scoring runs, not by just home runs, but also just driving a guy in on a ground out or a sac fly. That's just really going to make a difference in these potentially low-scoring games this weekend. So you definitely hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah. So as we get out of here, we'll do it each together. I want your most important position player, and I want your most important pitcher. You can do them together and explain a little bit why. But Joe, for you first, who is your most important pitcher for South Carolina to win this regional and most important position player?
Yeah, so my most important pitcher is the aforementioned James Hicks. He's going to get thrown into a spot this weekend where you really, really, really need him. And if he performs well at all, I think it's going to be the juice that this team needs to kind of take it over the edge and, win a little bit more. I've talked about it all year that this team kind of runs on morale a little bit. They've got a little tiny gas tank for – if you fill it up with enough morale and juice and energy, this team will go from it. So I think if James Hicks steps up and kind of leaves it all out there with all the swagger and energy, kind of like a Jack Mahoney style start, this team is going to go places. So James Hicks is my guy. Like I said, I'm not sure exactly what spot he'll be in. I'm assuming it's going to be Friday, but you never know if they're going to play conservative. My most important position player will be Ethan Petrie. I mean, the kid's been nails all year, and like everyone else, has kind of been struggling. I mean, with the rest of the offense, you haven't heard as much about him, but really, really decorated freshman that needs to step up when the lights are brightest. You can't really finish off. I know he's got all the accolades and stuff, and they're piling up and piling in, but you got to finish it off strong. You can't really have a season that's that strong and not bring home any hardware. It doesn't mean anything at the end of the day when you don't have any hardware to show for it. So I think with the season that Ethan Petrie's having, he's leading this offense, and I think you need a big, big regional from him offensively. And I think he's also too kind of the lifeblood, right? I think after McGillis got hurt, Petrie just burst onto the scene, and he was himself. Played really, really, really well, and the offense followed suit. So I think he, like I said, with James Hicks, the spark plug in the offense. If Ethan Petrie's hitting well, the rest of the offense is. So those are my two hitter and pitcher to watch.
Jack, what you got for us?
Yeah, I'm not going to waste a ton of time talking about this guy since I kind of already hit on it before. But I will say Matthew Becker's probably my guy to pitch. Be the X factor on this pitching staff this weekend. Like I said before, he could pitch in any spot that you really need him to this weekend. I'm not sure what South Carolina's pitching plans are, but I just don't see him starting on Friday. But he's your guy I think that you want to get outs from, especially just in any key situation. I mean, he's pitched in relief before. He's closed out games. And then the thing I noticed about him, I think just when the lights are the brightest, I think he pitches a lot better. We saw this last year when he dominated. Well, I say dominated, but he didn't do amazing against Tennessee. But then, nevertheless, he was still really good against top 10 teams in Tennessee and Texas last year. And he's been nails when you need him to be this year. He pitches better as the game goes along. So I just think you throw him in a good spot, and I think he's going to do well. And then my hitter / kind of just player overall of the series of the weekend is going to be Cole Messina. He is the anchor to carry to help out with this pitching staff. He will guide them this weekend, hopefully pitching well. And then just at the plate, we know what he can do. He's one of the best hitting catchers in baseball, or college baseball, I should say. So you just want that guy that can hit a 3-run homer at any time at the plate. I'd honestly take him just as much as Petrie or Wimmer, any of those guys in any given spot. So those are definitely the two guys that I think are going to be important in this weekend.
Yes. And I will say this too. I had to look it up while Jack was talking, but Ethan Petrie, over his last 7 games, which includes the SEC tournament and a series against Tennessee, and then that midweek against Charlotte, Ethan Petrie is hitting .368, getting on base at a .519 clip, and slugging .632 with 4 RBIs, 5 walks, and 5 strikeouts. That's more on pace with what Ethan Petrie is and should be. That's more on pace. He's taking good pitches. You're seeing Ethan Petrie slowly start to get out of this slump. He's taking better swings. So all that said, I'm not going Ethan Petrie. Just to vary it up, I'm going to say Braylon Wimmer, kind of the heart and soul. He was talked about as a captain, as a leader on this team from the jump, and they've missed him at short. They've missed him when he hasn't been out there, and their struggles have come when he left the game against Auburn and just hadn't been out there. And they've been fine defensively, but he just brings a stability, a range at short that you get from a fourth-year player, from a guy that started a bunch of games. And when he goes and he ticks and he's taking good at-bats, you're seeing the entire team tick and take good at bats. So he sets the table. He'll hit in that 2-hole behind either Brewer or Braswell or whoever, and gives some protection to the leadoff guy, gives some protection to Ethan Petrie and Cole Messina. Or when you have good hitters hitting around each other, they give some protection. So for Wimmer, that's a huge thing. Cut down on some strikeouts, hit for some average, get on base, and if you hit one and really drive one, do that. And I think if he does that, he'll make the offense tick. And then I'm going to go Jack Mahoney, a guy that you're going to – if you hold him for game 2, which right now I would – unless something crazy happens, I think they're going to do. If you hold him, he's either pitching Saturday at noon in an elimination game, or he's pitching in front of a packed house at Founders Park with a chance to go 2-0 in a regional. That's all. I mean, and there's no guy on this roster that would want the ball more. I mean, that dude's a competitor, and I've gotten to know Jack and his family well writing that feature. And of course, Jack he writes a big Chapin feature today and picks the Chapin guy. But
you call me out.
Yeah. But Jack Mahoney, that second game, that it's so critical to go 2-0 in a regional to go and try and win. It's hard to go through a loser's bracket. So you're going to need him. If everything goes chalk and South Carolina ultimately wins that first game against Central Connecticut State, and you have him in a winner's bracket, that's huge. You need Jack Mahoney to pitch well in that game, whether it's in a winner's bracket or if he's pitching to stave off elimination. Going to be absolutely huge to get a good performance out of him, and he's been pitching his best ball of late. When you talk about Jack Mahoney with a 2.65 ERA and a 1.06 WHIP in his last 17 innings, and that includes a start that he was bumped up 2 days rest on against A&M. So he's been nails the last 3 weeks, and South Carolina needs more of that from Jack.
Absolutely. All right, guys, before we close things out, let's get into our official predictions. Jack, you want to go first?
Man, Collyn's 5-minute speech there, it kind of just made me think in my head, like, oh, gosh, I got to pick. What do I do here? What do I do? I know now what I want to do because he makes me want to run through a brick wall now. Just
there you go.
Going into this weekend. Okay, so I think obviously they should probably win Friday, but I'm cautiously optimistic just because we know what this team can be. They can either be really good or really bad. But I do think whoever they pitch, I just think they're going to be doing enough to win a game. And then Saturday, you're playing for a chance to go 2-0 in that 6 o'clock spot. Jack Mahoney. And this is what I'm talking about with Collyn. Really setting the tone.
Yeah.
Give me Jack Mahoney to give a good start and send the Gamecocks into Sunday 2-0. But then Sunday, you got to win one and you move on. The team to come out of the losers bracket has to win 2, correct?
Yes.
I would say South Carolina loses the first game, comes back to reality a little bit, and then in a winner-take-all game 4 for them, they're going to win. I do think they will play Campbell on Saturday and win that game. And then I just think you'll face Campbell again on Sunday, and you'll get the best from them. So, yeah, give me South Carolina to go 3-1 this weekend and move on to Gainesville.
I should have gone first because that's my prediction. I think South Carolina is going to lose game 1 of the finals. I don't think they're going 3-0. I think they go 3-1. They win game 2 against Campbell too. Jack, come on now.
I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry.
Game 2 against Campbell. I think Campbell's arguably the best team in this regional. I would love to see a 7-game series between South Carolina and Campbell. I think that would be a whole lot of fun.
It'd be so much fun.
Yeah, but you're not. Unfortunately, it's college baseball, and you don't get 7-game series. But yeah, I mean that's my prediction. The Gainesville regional, we'll talk about that
if it happens.
We'll talk about all that next week. But for now, that's my piece. And CT,
I think. How about this? I think South Carolina wins this thing 3-0. I think they go clean sweep, or they split. I can't see it making a Monday. I don't think this regional makes it to Monday for that regional winner take all game 7 of it. If South Carolina gets to Sunday 2-0, I think they put it away. But if they lose Friday or Saturday, I don't know if they have the pitching to do it. From a bullpen standpoint, from a starter standpoint, I just don't know with all the injuries they have. So I think realistically, I think South Carolina makes it through unscathed. I say they go 3-0. I think the offense gets back on track, and I think that they're in a spot where they're playing they have one of their better weekends in the last what feels like forever. But in reality, about the last month, I think they have one of their best weekends. And you get vintage Jack Mahoney, and you really make a statement that says, okay, we have a chance to go down to Gainesville or play whoever and make it to Omaha.
Absolutely. All right, guys, that is everything from us here at GC Live Foul Balls.
We got 2 questions, do we not?
Yeah, we do have a question.
We have 2
I have
questions.
a question myself, actually.
Jack, hit us.
All right, so either of y'all, if regardless of what happens, let's say they get to the championship round Sunday, who do you start in that first game, pitching-wise?
I go Eli Jones.
Say that again. I'm sorry, I missed it. I was looking at the comment.
No, you're good, man. So let's say, just regardless if South Carolina goes 2-0 or 2-1, whatever the case is, heading into Sunday, who do you start in what could potentially just be a winner?
Eli Jones, for sure.
Eli Jones. Now, that changes and shifts, obviously, if you lose one of your first 2 games, because then you probably have to start Eli Jones Sunday afternoon, which means you might have to start Becker or somebody else Sunday night, which changes the math on everything. But if you go 2-0 and you don't start Eli Jones, I think you start him Sunday night.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Lynn was asking, have we announced Friday's starter? Not yet.
Not yet.
No.
Not yet.
And then famously Garnett asked, this will be our last question, thoughts on the UNF transfer?
Good. High, hit for average, hit for power. Didn't hit for a whole ton of power. Got on base in 50% of his plate appearances. Stole 20 bases. Had a batting average on balls in play over 400. Hit 6 for 15 against Florida State, and South Carolina combined. Really, really good player. We'll play either center field or one of the corner outfield spots. We'll play the outfield for South Carolina. And I mean, just a table setter that they haven't had in a while, and struck out just 20 times in over 250 plate appearances for North Florida last year. Really, really good player.
I agree. I mean, Collyn, I read what you wrote today about him, so all good things.
Yeah. I do know there was the chances of South Carolina advancing to a super. I will give Parker, I do not know his last name, but he is Stats-O-War on Twitter. Ran a ton of simulations. Ran 10,000 simulations for each regional. And the Columbia regional, South Carolina, this does factor in recency bias. So how a team is playing entering the tournament as well. So you can be like, well, South Carolina, like they're not playing well. This does factor in some of that. South Carolina has a 53.1% chance to advance based on these 10,000 simulations. Campbell is next up at 24.3%, NC State 22.6%, and then Central Connecticut less than 1%. So you're talking about, it's not a foregone conclusion, but these simulations do have it to where South Carolina is the favorite to make it out of this Columbia Regional, and Campbell a very, very dangerous second.
Yeah, absolutely. Jack, you got anything else to add?
Let's have a fun weekend, man. Let's make the most of it, regardless of what happens. Let's have a nice weekend. So
absolutely,
I agree. And I will say, let's go over coverage plan. Jack and I will be at Founders for the lovely Columbia Regional. Joe, you and Mr. Mike Uva will be doing post-game shows live every night for about 30 to 45 minutes, depending on how long it goes, after each game in the regional, live on our YouTube and all of our channels. We will have full coverage from tomorrow's practice, which starts at 10 a.m., full coverage from the presser, which starts at noon. So plenty of baseball coverage coming up on Gamecock Central over the next few days.
It's going to be a lot of content. Going to be a fun weekend.
Yeah. Well, hey, when they're playing a regional, it's all hands on deck. It's all hands on deck.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, thank you for tuning in. For everyone here at GC Live Foul Balls, good night.